Okay, calm down.
We're going to bring onto the show the wonderful Thomas Frank, the journalist, cultural critic, historian, writer. He co-founded and edited the Baffler magazine and is the author of the books What's the Matter with Kansas? How Conservatives Won the Heart of America, Listen Liberal, or Whatever Happened to the Party of the People. And the people know A Brief History of Anti-Populism, among others. So welcome, Thomas Frank.
What up, Katie Halper?
How's it going? Back together.
I'm not going to tell you till we get those likes to 350.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Where are we on the likes? Yeah,
that's a joke. I didn't realize you actually you did. I don't even know what that is, but
you give a thumbs up, and it's a way to spread the news, spread the word about the show, which of course is good, and it's a free way to support the show.
I see. No, I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing
you're not.
You. How are you doing?
I'm good. You?
Great.
Where have you been? I know you've been writing for European outlets because people don't know what happened is Thomas Frank was very popular on MSNBC when he wrote the book What's the Matter with Kansas, which is what's wrong, which criticizes, of course, the Republican Party. But then he made the mistake of writing Listen Liberal. And shockingly enough, it didn't get the same reception at MSNBC.
But weirdly, so I sort of disappeared in this country from the electronic airwaves, but it didn't affect, so in Europe, in Europe, it did really well. Europe, Australia, Canada, places like that. It did great. So, so I still write for like a French newspaper, but the main thing is I've been working on a new project, a new book, and I'm really deep into it. You get into that where I've done this enormous amount of research, and I know the subject forward and backward. And I'm very deep in writing it. But the election of Trump, the impending, I guess it was the impending election of Trump. And then I had to sort of stick my head back up for a little while. But I will disappear again in a few days, and then you won't have to worry about me. Yeah.
And what is your new book on, or is that a secret?
It's not a secret. It's a history of creativity.
Wow.
The word. Not like the creative act itself, right? But the word and how it and then it's sibling innovation and where they came from when they became a big deal. And it all starts right after World War II. It's a fascinating story.
Wow.
And and it becomes an academic discipline. It becomes and there is a political side to this too. The various presidents use these words. Weirdly, Republicans like the word creative and Democrats like the word innovation.
Interesting.
I know. It's like you wouldn't have predicted that, right? But
yeah.
It's but there's all sorts of absolutely fascinating sides to this, and that's what I've been working on. I'm very, very deep in it.
You attended both conventions, and of course, I'm very excited to have you on in conversation with Matt Karp, because both of you have a lot to say when it comes to how and why Kamala Harris lost.
Yeah.
But and you of course wrote a piece. I can't believe the New York Times let you back, Thomas.
What? I'm a good writer. What are you talking about?
I did a
good job.
You write some painful truths, and maybe they let you back because you were proven right. And we'll get to that piece in a second. But tell us what you saw at the conventions and whether you were able to predict and how you were able to predict the outcome of this election.
Oh, well, I didn't predict it in any public venue, just to my friends,
Right.
But that was easy towards the end because they were tied in the polls, and we know after we've done this 3 times now with Donald Trump, the polls always underestimate his support.
Right.
And so it was pretty easy to see that.
I mentioned this New York Times piece, so let's just read.
Yeah, but you should mention first of all, before we even go into this.
Okay.
I write some version of this story
every year.
Every 4 years. Every 4 years, I return and I write. And I remember the first time I did it. It was in 2004. What's the Matter with Kansas had just hit, and I was very much in demand back then. Like I would be on the radio and whatever. But I wrote some version of it, and I remember writing it because I did it in between like radio and TV hits. And I think I wrote it in about an hour,
right.
But I write and rewrite and write and rewrite the same goddamn thing.
Right.
The one I
did
about
have to swap things out, like
no, it's fresh every time. It's completely
Oh,
new
okay.
every time. But the one I wrote about Hillary, that was the all-time champion because I wrote it before.
Right.
I think you remember this. I wrote
Yeah.
it. I wrote it before the election happened, and it was in the Guardian, and the Guardian was sitting
Yep.
on it, and they put it up on their website the minute the AP
Yeah.
called. I mean, a second
Yeah.
after the AP called the election, they pushed publish on it. And what's the reason I remember it so fondly is because not only was it a really good story that I had really worked on and et cetera, but I was the only one that had it. The Guardian was the only paper that had
Right.
a Trump win story. The Washington Post had prepared nothing. The New York Times had prepared nothing. And so they, for about 24 hours, they were the only ones with a really good, well thought out Trump win story. Now, I was very proud of that achievement, but it's funny, it really backfired on me.
Because people are mad that
It
you
made me
knew why it
the
happened.
Guardian, yeah, the Guardian loved it, and like readers in England and Australia and New Zealand were very, I mean, it was a big deal, but in this country it was like the kiss of death. It was like, what had I done? How could he do something like that?
Right.
Well, I do it every 4 years.
But why? What did you do wrong? Like you should have said that it's
No,
what
it was
fascism is on
correct.
the rise.
The story.
What were they mad at you about? Oh,
Yeah,
that you
that's
would
right.
dare to
Well,
think
no,
that she
because I said the
was
same
gonna
thing. I
win?
said that this is it's a failure of the Democratic Party, and I
Right.
I put the blame on the Clinton campaign, and
How could you
no,
do that?
I didn't mention RussiaGate, and
What?
all through those years, I never mentioned RussiaGate. I never wrote about it. I never went on TV and talked about it. I never said a word about it because I it wasn't true, Katie.
Yeah. Yeah, you think?
But you know how easy
Wow,
that was to see?
how much did Putin pay you to say that,
Yeah,
Tom?
yeah. But you know why I never wrote about it and I never went out and researched it. I never because it's like that story stank from day one because
Yeah.
it so obviously served the agenda of
Right.
these powerful people. I
Yeah.
mean, so it's the kind of thing where a journalist should have been, instead of like racing to get on
Regurgit
that
yeah.
bandwagon, they should have been like,
Regurgitating it. Right.
huh, this is really suspicious.
Right.
This story has a very suspicious side to it, but they did the opposite.
As Aaron Mate calls it, who's like one of the biggest critics.
Well,
There's a
well,
handful
no,
of them.
I used to be on
Uh,
your show all the time. I
yeah.
know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he calls it a privilege protection racket,
yeah,
Russiagate, because that
yeah.
way none of the consultants had to look at what they did wrong. Um, and so do you want to talk about your article?
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, you can put it
all
up
right,
now. I just wanted to do that
all right,
preamble. Everything I
yeah,
do is so long-winded. I'm like, Katie, give me 10 seconds to set this up, and then I talk for 10 minutes.
right, okay. So before you start your 10-hour monologue, no, I'm just kidding. You're a very engaging speaker, obviously. Everyone. Oh, 1
Yeah,
second. Sorry. What
you
am
got
I?
the ads there
I
anyway.
know
You have to
what
scroll
even
down.
is
No, this
that?
is it's
An
just an ad.
investment thing. I know,
Yeah,
but okay.
yeah,
The elites had it coming.
yeah.
Biden America last, that says. And then the part I wanted to read was you write here. You say, is it, am I showing the article? I forgot
Yeah,
about that.
you are. Then no,
Okay, yeah.
that's it. I
These
wrote
the
that the other day.
nice. Well, those tech-minded Democrats got exactly what they set out to get, and now here we are. At the Republican convention in July, J.D. Vance described the ruination visited on his working class town in Ohio by NAFTA and trade with China, both of which he blamed at least in part on Mr. Biden, and also the human toll taken by the Iraq War, which he also contrived to blame on Mr. Biden. Today, Mr. Vance is, although he did vote for it. Today, Mr. Vance is the vice president elect,
No,
and what
that's
I
right.
hope,
That's what he said.
yeah,
That's right. Keep
and
going.
what I hope you will understand, what I want you to mull over and take to heart and remember for the rest of your life is that he got there by mimicking the language that Americans use to associate with labor, with liberals, with Democrats. By
Correct.
comparison, here's a Barack Obama in 2016 describing to Bloomberg Business Week his affinity for the private sector. Just to bring things full circle about innovation, the conversations I have with Silicon Valley and with venture capital pull together my interests in science and organization in a way I find really satisfying. So those are
Wait,
two.
keep going.
Oh,
Keep
okay,
going.
okay,
Let me
okay.
read it.
All
Let me
right.
read it. Well,
I
I
hope
hope
Miss.
I hope Mr.
Oh, you read
Obama.
it. Yeah, why don't you read it? Duh.
Well,
Okay,
I
go.
hope Mr. Obama finds his Silicon satisfaction. I hope the men of capital whose banks he bailed out during the financial crisis show a little gratitude and build him the biggest, most expensive, most innovative presidential library of them all. But his party is in ruins today without a leader and without a purpose. And then I go on and go after, oh, yeah, their stupid eternal strategy. It would have been nice, Katie Halper, if the Democrats could have triangulated their way into the hearts of enough educated and affluent suburbanites to make up for the working class voters they've lost over the years. But somehow that strategy rarely works out. They could have gone from boasting about, wait, here we go. You ready? I gotta switch my voice slightly.
Okay.
They could have gone from boasting about Dick Cheney's endorsement to becoming a version of Mr. Cheney themselves, and it still wouldn't have been enough. A party of the left that identifies with people like Mr. Cheney is a contradiction in terms, a walking corpse.
Well said. Very, very excellent article, and very satisfying read. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how anyone. Well, we're gonna get to Matt Karp is joining us soon, and I cannot wait to show you guys some really great videos. By the way, that I think you're gonna really like about how much introspection the Democrats are engaging in. But
Lots,
spoiler alert,
right?
they're
Lots.
not. Yeah, it's not a lot.
I'm going to go to that convention too.